only paid $300 for it. So this is my new big investment. This is a 2002-ish, I think, Honda Recon 250. This is one of my most favorite four-wheelers of all time because this one came from my local agronomist who I used to work for the year after I graduated high school, back in 2019. So he bought these brand new in 2002, and high school and college kids have been using these in their summer jobs ever since. And they've been abused. We abused the crap out of these things back in the day. And now they've retired the fleet of Honda Recons. They're using bigger, newer four-wheelers now. But I called him up and I said, hey, do you happen to have one of those old Honda Recons still? And he said, actually I do. Would you pay $300 for it? And I said, absolutely. So I'm gonna turn this $300 four-wheeler, which usually runs, for some reason right now it's not, but when it runs, it's not very good. I'm gonna turn this $300 four-wheeler into the ultimate mapping and spraying four-wheeler for the farm. So, stay tuned. So I got a small pile of parts here behind me. I got some more elsewhere, and my goal with this thing is to make a good usable four-wheeler that's reliable for everything I need to do for under $700. So we're gonna see if I'm pretty confident in my ability to accomplish that. But first, this thing needs to be cleaned up. It's covered in dust, covered in bird poop, and just looks kind of disgusting. Well, it's clean and pink. Almost as pink as a 3-year-old Case IH tractor. I was looking up ways how to restore this plastic. You know, you can get the flamethrower or the torch out, or you can sand it all down. But you know what? I kind of like it. It's kind of one of those things you look at it and you're like, that's a Honda that'll last forever right there. Like a nostalgic look. That patina, you know, I've heard that's cool nowadays. So to start out in my small pile of parts here, I have a carb kit. This was $20.25, so I'll start the calculations now of how much I'm actually paying for this thing. But one thing I really liked about these four-wheelers back when we worked for the agronomy firm was they were extremely easy to work on. Like one of these would stop working out in the field, we'd push it onto the back of the pickup with another four-wheeler, we'd take it to the shop, and I got so good at taking these carbs apart in about 15 minutes. I could take one of these things apart, clean it out, put it back together, and have the four-wheelers running again. So I could just clean it again, but I'm guessing that these carbs have never been rebuilt. So I'm just gonna go ahead, do it properly, rebuild the carb, and see if it makes it run any better.
So like I had previously mentioned in the video, these four-wheelers are incredibly easy to work on. You take that top lid off of a couple of metal clips, take the air filter out, a couple of plastic pop rivets gets that air box nice and loose. Now I was struggling here a bit getting the hose clamp between the air box and the carburetor off. It was really sticky, and I tried to pry the carburetor a little bit, which is kind of a no-no. So what I ended up doing was I took the side panels off and then just started taking that carburetor off, as I figured it'd be easier to take the entire thing apart in one unit and then take the air box off the carburetor after I had it out of the four-wheeler rather than trying to do it in the four-wheeler. So here, I just removed the throttle linkage right there. Now there's a vent line and a fuel line that connect the carburetor to the four-wheeler, and once those lines come off, the carburetor comes right off. Even though I've taken these carburetors apart probably 15 times before, I decided to get a video out to show me exactly how to do this carburetor rebuild, because I've never actually taken one of these carburetors all the way apart before. Usually in the past, when I had to clean one of these out to get a four-wheeler running again, I would just take the bottom of the bowl off, take the jets out, throw some carb cleaner through it, put it back together, and it would start running again. But just to be sure, I got this video from Mid-Nebraska Motorsports up, and they showed me exactly how to do it. Once the carburetor was fully taken apart, I got out the ultrasonic cleaner that I borrowed from a friend, filled it with some distilled water, and then dunked the carburetor parts, as you can see, in the ultrasonic cleaner. These ultrasonic cleaners are awesome. They do a great job of cleaning carburetors, and you don't have to use any harsh chemicals to do it. I struggled a little bit here getting it attached on the side, but once I did, I let it sit for 20 minutes and clean the carburetor out. Once I had that carburetor cleaning, I decided to take the fuel tank off. It's an extremely easy process, and it's one that I probably didn't really need to do, but I just wanted to make sure that I get it all drained out, get all the gunk out, so that way I would not have any problems in the future with this fuel tank. Once the tank was off the four-wheeler and the carburetor was done cleaning in the ultrasonic cleaner, I decided to take it out and let it dry. Now look at how disgusting that water is. These ultrasonic cleaners do a fantastic job of cleaning these carburetors, and there is different solutions that you can get specifically for carburetors, but that was just using distilled water, and it did quite an amazing job. I currently do not own one of these ultrasonic cleaners, but I definitely will in the future.
Now that the tank has been drained out and cleaned, and the carburetor has been cleaned in the ultrasonic cleaner, we're kind of at the tipping point here for the running part of the project, because now I get to start putting it all back together. And while this is drying out a little bit, I'm gonna start this tank, get that back on, and then wait for that to dry and start putting this carburetor back together.
The tank was a little bit harder to put back on than it was to take off. Getting it in between those two plastics is a little bit of a challenge, but not bad at all. There's two bolts that go on the top of the tank up by the handlebars that I'm tightening right now, and then sooner or later here I'll be putting the straps on the bottom right there. Just a couple straps to hold it to the frame. Not much holding that tank on. Super easy process to do.
So a couple days have gone by since I have last worked on this project. The carburetor is now clean and is ready to put back together. But before I get too much further on this four-wheeler, there's one thing I want to do, and that is where did I just put it? I just had it in my hand. Here it is. Put this power outlet on this four-wheeler, because it's going to be a lot easier when everything's kind of taken apart in here. In fact, I probably should have done it before I put the tank back on. But I want to run some wires from the battery to the front here. Now I'm trying to figure out where to put this power outlet, and it's kind of a weird shaped one. I was kind of hoping I could get one that you just drill a hole and you put it in and you screw it from the bottom, but none of those were quite as weatherproof as this one is. This is a really nice weatherproof one with some really nice heavy wires. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to drill a hole right about here, run the wires through it, and then just have it poking up like that, enough out of the way that it's not going to bother my steering at all. And then it will allow me to plug in all my GPS equipment on the front here. And then once I get this installed, then I can start doing some fabrication here up front to mount my GPS receiver and my monitor. But first things first, this battery cable is actually exposed. Looks like it's been rubbing here the last few years. So I have a new battery cable. I literally went to the hardware store and bought the smallest, cheapest one I could. It was $6, but I don't know 100% sure if this is gonna work or not, because the more I look at this, there's some other wires coming out of here. So I might just be able to cut them off and just put them right on the end of the wire and screw them on. Or, I don't know, I'm gonna take this one apart, see what there all is to it, and see if I can just kind of make my own thing here. So I took apart this battery cable, and turns out they basically did the exact same thing that I was planning on doing right out of the factory. So I should be able to cut this cable off right here, attach one of these connectors on like that, and put it on the end of this cheap battery cable, and then I'll be safe from any shock, and it will still work perfectly fine. A new one of the proper battery cables from Honda was like 40 bucks. So $6 and a couple of washers, good to go. Okay, so I'm thinking that this, after that falls down, will go about right there-ish. So I will need a hole about right here. Yep. There we go. Just like that.
So while I'm recording this, I just kind of realized that some of you guys who may be new to the channel might not actually quite understand what I'm doing to this four-wheeler. So I am a farmer and I am an agri-GPS dealer. And in farming, sometimes it's really important for us to have driven GPS boundaries of our fields and allow us to do a lot of recording and efficiency tracking and profit management of these fields. So I am building a rig that I can drive these boundaries for myself and for my customers and other people in my area that might need them. and kind of create a little side business venture with this four-wheeler.
Well, I got this connected back to the battery now. This is a little USB charger that lights up blue when it's plugged in. Let's see if it works. I don't know how well you can see it on camera, but it is lighting blue. So we have power. All good there. Now I got to figure out how to like permanently mount this. I don't know whether I should drill a couple holes and use zip ties, or I should just glue it on. Haven't quite figured that one out yet. So in order to mount this power outlet to the ATV itself, what I ended up doing was I ended up making these holes right here on this mounting pad just a little bit bigger, big enough I could fit a 1/4 inch bolt through it. So my plan is to mark out that hole and that hole, drill through, put the bolt through the backside, put a nut on the top, and just bolt it on that way. So in that case, if this receptacle fails, it's not glued on there, I can remove the 2 bolts, put a new one on, and put it back on there. Just like that. There we go. Not going anywhere. So I have one more part of the carburetor in the ultrasonic cleaner that I kind of forgot about. But for the most part, I can start putting this thing back together. So I'm gonna get my video back out, and that tells me how to put it back together and start getting this thing rebuilt.
Thanks to the video, the carburetor rebuild was pretty dang easy. Not quite as easy as taking it apart, but it went pretty smoothly. In the top left hand corner and bottom right hand corner of the cardboard, you guys might see some scribbles and some drawings and some values. There was a couple of things I actually took off the carburetor that were not in the video, and I wanted to make sure it got put back in the right place, so I drew some pictures on where they need to go. I also wanted to make sure that the air fuel mixture screw and the idle screw were set back to the original values that they were at originally. Now this fuel bowl did give me some issues. The new O-ring was kind of sloppy in the groove, but I think it's just because it hasn't been pressed down and expanded yet. So it all went back together pretty easily. This was not a Honda rebuild kit. I wanted to save some costs, so I bought a third-party kit, and altogether it went very well. And there was one hose on the carburetor that was cracked. It was not a fuel line, but I decided that it's probably going to have some fuel vapors going through it, so I replaced it with one of these blue fuel hoses anyways. I didn't want a blue one. I wanted to get a black one like it was originally on it, but that's all that my hardware store had. So I don't remember how much it cost, but it was so negligible, I'm not even going to bother putting it on the cost list. Putting the carburetor back in the four-wheeler was extremely easy. There's a vent hose and a fuel hose need to go back on, and then there's 2 bolts that hold it to the engine. All in all, extremely easy for a 250 four-wheeler. I know lots of people are really afraid to work on carburetors as there's a lot of small moving parts in them, and they're kind of complicated, but as long as you can find yourself a good video to show you step by step on how to do something like this and take your time, they're really not that bad, especially these simpler ones on these smaller vehicles.
Now, before I put the air box back on and everything, I just want to see if it'll start to make sure I didn't screw anything up really bad. So I'm gonna put a little bit of fuel in it and see if it'll turn over and start. I don't have the fuel turned off, do I? Oh, did I set the fuel turned off? Well, that's not supposed to happen. I think I had my throttle screwed in backwards, which would cause an issue. Oh, that feels so much better. Okay, let's try this again. Hand on the kill switch. Where is it? Oh! Oh my gosh! It idles so well! So while I got this four-wheeler warming up here ready to get loaded on the truck, I got a new seat cover. This is kind of like an alternative to actually getting a new seat cover. It's just cinches over the top. It was $39.95. I'm not quite sure how this goes on, but I think it just goes on like this. Look at that. Is it perfect? No. Was it cheap and will it keep my butt dry? Yes. Okay, so now we have So now to build the thing that makes this the unit that I want it to be. The whole reason I bought it. So, this is a GPS bracket. I'm gonna put this right about there, dead center, in front of the ATV, so that way hopefully I can put a GPS receiver up there, and then I'm gonna build some sort of bracket so that way the monitor is about right there, right in front of my face. Easy to touch, easy to see. So, I think I'm gonna take this front bracket off. I think it'd be easiest to make something with it off, and then I can weld and not have to worry about damaging this beautiful plastic skin for this four-wheeler.
So I had a vision in my head of what I kind of wanted this system to look like. I knew that the GPS needed to be dead center of the four-wheeler and that the monitor needed to be easy to see and easy to touch, but I really didn't have a plan on how I was going to accomplish that. So this was a lot of trial and error, a lot of measuring, a lot of fitting, to seeing how stuff would work. And by no means am I a professional fabricator. I have very little fabricating experience. So if you're watching this video and you would like to do something like this and you have very little fabricating experience, you never know until you try. This is just something that I just took my time and figured out as I went. Use the power tools all safely, of course. Obviously I wasn't wearing any safety glasses here, but I was squinting, I promise. And just take your time, make sure you do it correctly, and I'm sure that you'll be pleased with the end result. Because the front rack on this four-wheeler is so small and I don't have much space to work with the amount of stuff I need to attach, I decided to just tack everything on lightly so that way if something ended up not working or being too big, I could just take a hammer to it, break it off, and start over again. Now I'm not going to include the cost of materials in order to fabricate in my total value of the four-wheeler because I use all scrap metal that we had lying around the farm. But if you wanted to calculate something like this for yourself, I used about 5 foot of 1-inch tube steel and then about 18 inches of 1/2-inch tube steel. So here I have finally decided that I am happy with my design and that the tacks are no longer needed and that I can fully weld it together so that way it does not come apart. So while I was welding it together, I decided that I might need some braces for the T that I had designed for the monitor bracket, as there's a lot of vibrations and bumps that this four-wheeler would be going over, and I did not know if it could handle the stress. Now I really struggled here because I didn't want to use 1-inch tube steel as it would look kind of bulky. I was looking for some 1-inch flat steel, but after looking for a long time, I found that we didn't have any. But what I did find was some 1/2-inch tube steel that I cut at a 45-degree angle and decided that that would work to help brace this T together. Now I am by no means a professional welder or an experienced one, so some of my welds were fairly ugly, so I got the grinder out to kind of grind them down. There were a couple that after I ground it down I decided to re-weld because I thought I could do a better job. And once I did get the welder set, they did start looking a lot better, which was about here. Now here is a air rotary tool that has a Scotch-Brite pad on it. Now this is just being used to scuff up the surface, get all the surface rust off the metal so that way I can paint it and have a good finish. Now this paint job is going to look a heck of a lot better than the rest of the metal that is on the four-wheeler, as the back rack and the front brush guard are very scratched up and have quite a bit of surface rust on them. But for the price that I'm paying for this four-wheeler and the total amount of money that I'm going to have invested, I'm not too terribly worried about it. If it was a lot more expensive four-wheeler or a lot newer four-wheeler, I'd probably try and redo it all, but I figured for the price invested, the time that I was going to spend was just not quite worth it.
Oh boy, it works. Now when I was making it, I made sure I did a lot of test fitting with the John Deere receiver, because the John Deere receiver is so much bigger, so much longer. I wanted to make sure that there's gonna be no interference back here, and there should not be. It should fit just fine, but the main reason I'm building this is for the CRGs, so that's what I'm gonna first test it out with. But I kind of zip tied all the cabling here to the side of the front rack here, so that's out of the way. Gotta cut those zip ties. I have my power switch right there, and I also made it so that way I can steer full direction both ways without hitting the monitor. The monitor's not quite where I would have liked it. Wish it was a little bit lower, but because of the steering, that's as low as I could put it, because it narrowly misses it there. But this is sweet. I'm gonna love this thing. So I left the side panels off on purpose. I do think my clutch is out, so I did buy some parts for the clutch last night. That'll be a future video, but it is perfectly drivable. Starts right up now. Flip this little switch. This blade turns on. It's probably really hard to see right now. Here's why I think the clutch is out. I shift it into gear, and it automatically starts moving and it kills itself. So you kind of gotta finesse it a little bit. You kind of gotta give it a little bit of gas, and then power shift it in there. There we go. But once you get it into gear, it's fine. And I just drove this down the road a little bit, and according to the performance monitor on here, this thing goes 40 miles per hour. That's nuts for this little four-wheeler. I guess back in the day when I was driving this for the agronomist, I never really realized how fast it went, because you just boogied everywhere and took as many soil samples as you could during the day. But yeah, this thing's awesome. Look at that. Got RTK. Spent like, I gotta figure out my price. I haven't done mental math. I'll do it on the screen, how much this thing cost me so far and how much it's gonna cost after I put the new clutch in it. But man, I love this thing. So if you're in the area of where I am and you need some boundaries driven, I'm your guy. Like, give me a call, actually. I'll come driving for you. So there we go, guys. As this four-wheeler sits, I have $453.69 invested into it. Now, I did happen to buy $175.58 worth of clutch parts for it that I may or may not be putting in it. I don't know what's wrong with the clutch. There's like 3 different main parts that it could be. So it could be as low as $15, or it could be the entire $175.58. But if I do the quick math here, even after I put a full clutch kit in, if I have to, it'll be $630 roughly. So it'll still be under that $700 limit that I was looking for. And I'm gonna bring you guys along for that as well, because I've never done clutch work before. It'll be a first time for me. This looks fairly easy, but you know, it's something I've never done before, and I'd love to bring you guys along for that. And also, I mentioned something at the beginning of the video about putting a sprayer in the back of this, making a spraying four-wheeler. I haven't done that yet, obviously, because it's not really the right season to. I don't really have to worry about that until next year. It's just too late. But I do plan on buying maybe like a 15-gallon sprayer or something to throw in the back of this four-wheeler. So mid-season, after I'm done doing all my boundaries and GPS stuff, I can throw the sprayer in the back and then go around and use it for spot spraying or fence line spraying or whatever else. So if you guys like this video, I know it's a completely different format than I've done in the past. I don't think I've like ever done voiceover before, maybe once. So if you liked it, hit the like button. Let me know down in the comments what you did like, what you didn't like, what you think about the project, and make sure you get subscribed, and I'll see you in the next one.